Oh,
Are
I'm
you
not
at work?
I'm not muted.
No. I always forget that these ones are not automatically muted. And like the other week, I was sitting in the living room waiting for it to start, and my kids were watching Is It Cake? And there's like all this cheering in the background, and someone's like, "Babe, you are not on mute." And I'm like, "Oh, right." That's
Yeah, they're
loud.
usually muted.
Yeah.
I am not at work. I'm going to be leaving for dance momentarily. I work tonight is my last graveyard of 6 weeks.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, pretty excited. Pretty excited.
What time does graveyard start then?
10 p.m. till 6
Mm,
a.m.
yeah, makes sense. I was trying to think. My dad used to be a trucker for like Dairyland, so like the milk company, and so
Yeah.
those were like really late nights, and so their shifts, like even though technically his shift was most like 90% of it, like he'd start at like 11:30 at night. So ultimately the shift was a Friday shift because he started on a Thursday, and it was got really confusing. Like, what day are you working?
Yeah. Yeah, shift work is really confusing in general. It's really
Hmm.
funny because it's like no one I work with knows what day it is of the actual week.
Yeah,
We're all like, it's my Friday. It's my
yeah,
Friday. It's my Monday. So, yeah.
yeah. I Shift work's weird. I used to work at a gym, and I had consistent shifts, but the people that worked on the floor, they purposely never gave them consistent shifts so that like I don't know, so that they were like nobody had a shitty shift all the time, but it's actually like as a fitness facility, you would think that the healthiest option would be what you were going with. Having consistent schedules is better for you.
Yeah. Speaking of health, got my multivitamins. I take gummies with toddler.
Nice. Nice.
I've basically been living on fruit snacks.
It works.
How are
I'm
things going for you? How are you feeling about the business and everything?
Things are good. I'm like plugging away. I've been working at my to-do list all week. It was a long time of not working with Global Summit and then prepping my family, and just I chose not to work the week before we went because I let myself get overwhelmed with all the things. I So I'm back at it this week, but my kids were in Montana while we were at Global Summit. So I had to drive them halfway before I went to Mexico, and then I drove all the way um, afterwards. It
Wow.
was a long week, but it was really good. Oh man, it was great. My husband made new friends too at Global Summit. He got super fucking drunk. Sorry, cursing. Super drunk. Um, and the one day, him and all the husbands started drinking when we went into the classes, so like 9:30 in the morning. So by the time we got out of the classes, they were a little bit sloppy.
That's hilarious.
He did not handle it quite as well as Mary's husband. Sweet.
Anybody want to share their wins for this week, last week, whatever?
Thursday?
Yes, it's Thursday.
Oh, I had a sale and I wrote it on. Oh, I think I told everybody about it on the Monday one. It was
I wasn't.
a.
I didn't hear it. I
It
don't
was a.
think I heard it.
Oh, wow, this is special. It was a previous. It was a previous consultant who's no longer in the business anymore, and I had just stayed in touch with her, and she had a client reach out to her, and then she forwarded it to me. So, and it resulted in a sale. So,
Woo!
yeah.
I love
Awesome.
those.
And I think since then I've gotten another sale from the emails
Ooh,
Nice.
because
I
I
like the
didn't
didn't
corporate
add.
email.
I didn't have this girl in my group, so it wasn't something from my group, but I had her in my phone, so I sent her a thank you via that way. But yeah,
That's awesome. Surprise sales are always nice. We have in the comments here.
I do love fry sales, but I also love the ones that I actually work for.
Yeah, those are nice.
Especially if you've worked like a long time for the sales. It feels real good. Christine, my hostess for the weekend has confirmed 13 people in attendance. Wow, 13. It'd be a good party. Do you like large groups of people or do you prefer the smaller?
I don't know that Christine's ever had any that big, but
No?
I will let her put it in the chat. This will be her largest group, so she'll see how she likes it this weekend.
I don't know if you have things that you're doing, whatever. One thing that I learned to do when I have a large group of people, especially like some women that talk, is I brought suckers so that they suck on them so they're quiet, so that they don't go on forever and ever and ever.
I have a letter game where I like it's a stack. There's like the alphabet goes twice, and at the beginning I'll be like, I'm gonna play a game throughout the party, and I only do it on the ones that like I feel like might need some focusing, and I'll be like, every time I hold up a letter, the first person who says a sexy word that starts with this letter gets that card, and at the end of the night, whoever has the most gets a prize, and it'll be like an extra draw ticket or something like that. But it's fun because people can't see them without glasses, so I still have to say the letter out loud, but they have to be paying attention. Every once in a while I pull out the fun ones and try and get them to do like something for Z or X. There's not many sexy words that start with those letters.
I like that game. I'm gonna write it down. Like that. Do you have a win for this week, Leah?
I am like plugging away at my to-do list for the accountability circle and just in general. I have posted like 4 TikToks this week, and not one of them has had less than like 550 views.
Wow.
And yeah, and I like sent out an email this today, like a mass one to book parties, and so not really results wins, but I've definitely like been plugging away and getting stuff done. Sorry.
Good for you.
I hope I don't disperse a bunch.
This is my to-do list for today, and you see not one of the things have been crossed off.
That was
I got shit done, but none of it was that.
That's fun.
Did I swear?
What?
I do this at local meetings, and I did it at the meeting with Chris when he came here, and I call it a swear tally. And I just like on a sticky note, I just write swear tally, and then I just like add a mark every time someone swears.
Oh, we are in a cursey house. I've given permission to my 2 oldest kids to curse, and my youngest has taken that as carte blanche, and he's already dirty. You guys will hear about that during this class. So there's a lot of cursing in my house. That Post-it note will be full fast. My husband's a framer. Do you have any wins, Mary?
I've been like struggling to get caught up since I've been back, but this is one that I found. I don't know where I've seen this. It was a 60 order thing. Have you seen it? I don't remember what group I found it in.
Do you need to come in?
I don't know. It could be top contributors or Canada.
Yeah. Anyways, there's these 60 hearts on here that I have to fill in the month, and I'm going to fill them with outside orders. And so far I got 4, and it's only the 2nd of May. So.
That's awesome. Is it the 2nd? I thought it was the 1st today.
The 2nd.
It is the 2nd. Well, look at me now. That's amazing. Jen, I can see you laughing at me.
I'm only laughing because I thought today was the 1st also.
I thought you were talking about Jen, and I'm like,
I know you were dancing, and I was like, great, and I could see Jen Cormier like laughing at me, and I'm like, yep, I did that.
Okay, well, I'm glad that all of us are mixed up on days, because I swear it was not Thursday today. So it was like 6:30, and I was like, shit, is there anybody doing training tonight?
Yeah, I forgot it was Thursday, and I was like, I'm gonna book and do this planning, and then I saw Sam's post, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta make some notes for tonight. Like, if I wing it, we will really squirrel hardcore.
All good.
Jen Cormier, do you have any wins?
I still have hair.
No, bonus.
I'm in the midst of doing graphics for my flash sale,
Ooh,
and
fun.
I'm doing inventory right now. I have a lot of inventory, ladies. Like
Yes,
a
you
lot.
do. Mm-hmm.
So, but I did a last minute party on Sunday it ended up only being 4 ladies.
Mhm.
It was almost $1,000.
Oh,
So like not bad. What else? I had another win for the week. I forgot it. I think that's a
throw it
good
in the
win.
chat. Those are good wins. You're getting your flash sale prepped, and you're
Oh, I have
also
2 orders already for my flash sale.
nice. When does your
It might
flash
When
go
it's
sale
flash
start?
starts May 13th to the 17th.
Oh, so that's a good pre-sale.
So
Nice.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Sam, Samantha, is it Sam or Samantha? What do you prefer? Oh, and you probably
Sorry, I had to come off mute. I prefer Sam.
Okay.
And my win is I made it into my new place, and I still have my head and my hair.
Moving is fun. So
Yeah.
I feel
And yeah, that's pretty much it, because I kind of put my business kind of on the side for a little bit. I have a new accountability challenge that I started yesterday. I'm going to be going live every single day on my personal Facebook page in the month of May.
woohoo.
On your Facebook page, not your VIP group.
Correct.
That I don't know why is scary to me.
No, it
I
is
can
so
see all
scary.
the things on TikTok, Facebook group, Instagram, but not my personal page.
Oh yeah, personal
Because
page.
there's more potential judgment on your personal page because they didn't choose to participate in it. But you'd be
Absolutely.
surprised out of it.
So
Mhm.
what kinds of things are you doing live?
So yesterday I actually decided to do this accountability challenge at like 9:45 last night. So I was like kind of last minute. So I just explained that I wanted everyone to hold me accountable. And then I showed the very first product that I ever tried with Pure Romance, which is the heart massager. And I think I'm just gonna keep it like PG, but every single day I'm gonna like showcase a new product.
Like that.
There was something, I cannot remember what group it was in, a couple years ago, especially during, it was like really big during the pandemic, a little bit later on. But they had a go live every day challenge thing. So maybe look for that, because they give suggestions of what you go live with, because it gets to a point where you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to do now, because I've done this for 6 days straight
Yeah.
and lost it. So some of them were like, do your makeup while going live, talk about something like that. Sometimes those mundane things mixed in with the other things, because you can run out of things. And congratulations, Jen Cormier, on getting your taxes done.
Woo, that's awesome.
My other win, I got my stuff back. I owe $8.55. My accountant was fantastic.
Nice.
My accountant has gotten me 5,500.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's about how much I had to pay.
This is the first
paid
year I'm
5,000?
getting money back.
Cool. That's a lot to pay. Okay, So we're 15 minutes in. So I'm going to start with some content unless anyone else has any other wins to share. Okay, we're good. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. This will kind of help break into this. So my name is Leah. I've been doing this for 16 years this last March, and I love it. I was that kid, very, very religious raised, when I'd had 1 year of sex ed in school, and then they passed legislation that they were allowed to teach that masturbation was natural, and I was pulled out of sex ed. So I knew nothing. My husband used to love watching Sex with Sue on Sunday nights, and he is the one that taught me about things like the G-spot. I remember my first party, or no, I was the hostess. So my first party was a friend's bachelorette. Jen Cormier was my consultant, and she goes, this is really going to go back in the day. I don't think many of you guys were passion parties consultants. We used to send people to the bathroom with the clitoral stimulator stuff to test out during the party. And so she's like, she's getting us all to do that. And I was like, oh, I can't because I've got my period, because I didn't know where my clitoris was. Had no freaking clue whatsoever. So I think that it's so important to just normalize having conversations about sex, body parts, things like that, for so many different reasons. Like the power that I got from just knowing how my body functioned, because I had nothing like that growing up. We kind of like talked about the fact that sex existed, but that was about it. And whether or not, it's good to have knowledge on how to talk to kids about sex, strictly because your clients are going to think of you as an expert, and they're going to come to you with questions, asking for advice on how to talk to them, how do you broach these subjects, things like that. So I find that it's really helpful for that. I took a class at Global Summit. Not global, it wasn't Global Summit at the time, but it was like 5-6 years ago, and they had a professional come in, and she talked about how to talk to your kids about sex. And it was super helpful because it really helped like shape some of these conversations. The most important thing is that it's not just a talk. There should never just be a talk and it's done. In some cultures, like in Sweden, I believe, and might be Denmark as well, they start sex ed conversations in school in kindergarten, because they start the conversation talking about anatomy. Penises are the same things as elbows. Clitoris and vulvas are super important parts of your anatomy. They are the same as the nose on your face, and there should be nothing shameful about those things. So sorry. Woohoo! My notes are a little all over the place. But by changing the names of things when you talk to your children about what they are, there's a few different scenarios that come as a result. One story that I heard was this teacher had a child in her class. I think it was like grade 2, young enough that a kid would complain about this, but she was coming to school and telling the teacher that last night her uncle babysat her and he ate her cookie. And this happened repeatedly throughout the school year. And then a parent-teacher conference happened. And she, as an aside, mentioned something to the parents. And the parents went white. Cookie is what they had referred to as her vulva. And her uncle had been sexually assaulting her for months. And no one was stopping it because no one knew it was happening. So using, like, yeah, sure, I use like random words with my kids and stuff, but they also know to call things the proper terms. They do know that sometimes it's not acceptable to talk about those things at school. My 9-year-old has like zero filter. So we've talked about things that are appropriate to talk about at school. He went on a trip to the science center, and he was so shocked about the fact that there was a statue of a man with a penis that was labeled, and he's like, and they have kids there. And I was like, okay, time for another conversation about how this is a healthy body part and that there's nothing wrong with that, and it is a good thing to talk about. It's just most people don't. Society has led us believe that sex is not something that we should be talking about, And as a result, things don't go as well. In those countries that have sex ed starting in kindergarten, their teenage pregnancy rate is almost non-existent because there's so many safe adults to talk to and the subject's not taboo. So they don't go exploring before they're ready, and they know what to do when they do start to explore. They're well acquainted with proper contraceptives and backup plans and things like that. But they're also just not as likely to explore quite as young because it's not something that they've been told is bad and shameful. The first thing you're going to do with a teenager is never tell them not to do something. So that's exactly what they're going to do. All right, so it needs to be a collaboration of age appropriate conversations, snippets and blips throughout your lifestyle, talking about proper anatomy, making sure that there's nothing naughty or shameful about the body, but making your kids aware that these are also private spaces. These are my private spaces that are not welcome to touch. I come from a family where I am the only one of the women in my immediate family, so 2 sisters and a mom, that was not sexually assaulted in a very traumatic way. So having those conversations and being aware that these things are not okay is just so important. My aunt, who did not have these conversations with her sister, ended up with two daughters that were sexually assaulted as well. It's just and they say 1 in 4 women have been sexually assaulted at some point in her life, and I think that that is a very, very low number because a lot of it does not get reported. Sorry, a little bit dark there for a minute. Where am I going? Okay, so also not having these conversations about what is and isn't okay. My neighbor ended up, her daughter and her sons were playing with their cousins and they were getting inappropriate, showing their privates to each other. And they didn't know it was wrong and inappropriate. They were being silly. But their older cousin came upstairs and mentioned something to her or to their mom. And so then she had a conversation with her daughter. And it turns out because her daughter didn't know that these things were not supposed to be touched and not private, her cousin had gone exploring with her, the one who actually kind of ratted himself, and they ended up having to press charges against him. So it's just so important to know and teach your kids what is and isn't okay and have these conversations, just like little bits here and there. I like to let the kids kind of lead the conversations to a certain extent. My kids are kind of funny. Each one has had different experiences. My oldest, when he went to sex ed for the first time, came home and was asking me about periods and things like this. And this is a boy, and he was curious. And we talked about periods and how they work and stuff like that. And then he told me how he learned that boys have acid comes out of the penis when they get excited. And it's like, oh, clearly you misheard that. So we had to have a conversation, and it is acidic, but it is not acid. This is the whole ADHD catching snippets of the conversation. So having the conversations cements those things in their head. Then there was my daughter, who is absolutely not interested in having conversations about anything to do with the body and development or anything like that. But when COVID hit, she was supposed to have sex ed that year for the first time, but she didn't get it because of COVID schooling, and she had started to develop. And so I had to sit her down. She grabbed the dog like a stuffed animal and held it, and we talked about her changing body. It was just, she needed to know. She needed to know that she was now that breast buds were developing. She's got about 2 years before her period's going to start. Things are going to change. You're going to be uncomfortable here. Your hormones are going to be doing this and that. And so she does not love these conversations. I've had to give her a little bit of trouble because she got mad at me for talking to her about her period at one point and was like, this is important. We need to talk about it. I know you don't like it. We will move on quickly. Don't be a bitch. Teenagers are kind of bitchy. Another reason why you let your kids lead the conversation. Sorry, I need to find my phone for this one. So sometimes they're going to ask you questions and you're going to think that they mean something else. So my boss sent me this text message the other day. Oh crap, it scrolled away from it. Okay, so her daughter asks her, what does gays mean? And she goes, well, you know, mom and dad love each other. Two men can love each other the same way. Then her daughter goes, so what is penetrating gaze? And my boss goes, read the whole sentence. And she's like, she stared at him with a penetrating gaze. Oops, went into an explanation that was not necessary. So it's really important to ask questions, ask follow-up questions like, what do you think that means? That's one of the examples that the trainer did was something like that, where the kid had mispronounced the word. And so if she had just dove into an explanation about what anal sex was, and the kid was actually asking a question about being able or something like that. And so first she asked the kid what they thought it meant, and then he explained it. And so then she's like, okay, I need to hear this in a sentence. Things like that, clarify what the kid's asking about, because otherwise you're going to have a weird random conversation that was kind of unnecessary. And having anal sex conversations with a 8-year-old is not fun. Another thing to think about though is these kids are talking to each other and they're getting misinformation. My youngest, because he's a fair bit younger than the other kids, and we have a significant amount of kids on our block, they talk. The older kids talk. I had to remind them repeatedly to be aware of little ears, because my 3-year-old kid was coming home talking about sex, transgender, different things like that. And he was so confused. He goes, Mom, I think Dad's gonna be transgender. And I was like, oh yeah? Why is that? And he goes, because he has big V's. My husband has big pecs because he lifts a lot of heavy shit. Thought that meant he was gonna get boobs and become transgender. It doesn't work that way, buddy. But then even now, like a couple weeks ago, we were gonna go for ice cream. He had forgotten where we were going, and so I called everyone. I was like, okay guys, we're gonna get ready to go. And I like to give my kids hints as to where we're going. And I was like, he's like, where are we going, and I was like, so I held up like an ice cream cone and licked, and I was doing this, and he goes, licking cocks? My son is 9. There's no way he heard that shit from me. So on that note, we also had to have a conversation about the fact that as the fact that he is choosing to talk about these sexual content, if he wants to continue having these conversations about things he doesn't understand, he's going to need to sit down with mom and dad and have a healthy sex conversation about how things work. And I'm like, are you comfortable with having that conversation? And he's like, no. And I was like, then in that case, you're not allowed to talk about these things because you don't know what you're talking about. I found it really important to set that boundary. And then when he went to grandma's for a week, I was like, and if you do it at grandma's house, I've told her to have that conversation with you. And grandma is super political and super religious. You don't want that conversation with grandma. It's really fun when you have to threaten your kids with healthy sex conversations. But he's also that one that I've taught him what words mean so that he understands that those are not appropriate words. He was saying douche, and I was like, so all the kids in the car, because he wouldn't stop saying it, learned what a douchebag actually was, what the purpose of it was. All right. But yeah, so you're going to follow their lead within reason. First of all, with my daughter, I have to force it. I can't follow her lead because she will not have these conversations and she won't understand. But with my youngest, I have to pull it back because he will be talking all the shit. Like he knows what he's talking about. What is it with guys and doing that? My husband used to have a poker night and all the guys would get together, and every once in a while I'd overhear parts of their conversation. I'm like, that man is lying through his teeth. There's no way he did that. Anyway, sorry, squirrel moment. Be open with the kids. Let them know that you're uncomfortable too. My oldest is 16 now, and when he got his first real girlfriend, we revisited the condom conversation. He has condoms that are available to him. I'm like, I know you're not ready for sex. I don't believe you're ready for sex for a long time, but it's not going to be my decision to make when you choose to make that decision. So I'm going to make sure you're prepared. I knew that in sex ed class, they had practiced putting on condoms. Turns out they had practiced on the teacher's fingers. I was like, well, that's not accurate in any stretch of the imagination. So I was about to bring him downstairs and have him practice putting a condom on Dr. D when he told me he had seen a class and he'd learned about pinching the tip and things like that. And I'm like, good. I was youngish when I had you, but you were planned. I do not intend on being grandma for a little while. And there's different things, like he was never in a relationship like that. So there were certain things as like, there are condoms, they're available, but I don't think you're there. He didn't have girlfriends. Now that he does, the conversation has changed. And other things that we've had to consider too over time. He was introduced to pornography much earlier than the average. He was in the 5th grade when a buddy was watching it on his TV in his bedroom when he was having a sleepover. So he got interested in exploring that relatively early on. So we had to have conversations when I would find things on his phone about, first of all, it's illegal. You're under 18. This isn't legal. Second of all, this isn't real. These things do not happen in real life. And then my husband went through and picked some age appropriate sexy pictures for my kiddo to have on his phone, because we knew he was going to explore, but we wanted to make sure that he was exploring within the realm of what was healthy, because pornography at such a young age can really actually affect the brain development, because it's just not a healthy setup for that sort of thing. Then as he started to explore himself, he found some of Dad's toys and he used Dad's toys. And we found out because he had left them uncleaned and on the counter. So a new conversation came up, and I got him what he needed. I told him where the proper lubes were, how to clean it, how to store it, and to make sure it's out of the way. So now if he leaves his friend wrapped up on the bathroom counter, I'm like, do you want your brother and sister to find it? Please put your friend away. It's that really fun balance of making sure that your kids are comfortable. So now my son is very comfortable talking to me about different things. There are certain things within reason, like I've told him, or I posted a bunch of TikToks this week. It's May Masturbation Month. And I was like, they are on there. If you find them, you can watch them. I'm sure you don't want to learn those things from mom. So just be aware, if you're seeing my face on TikTok, you may not want to watch it. But I don't want them being ashamed and afraid of what their bodies can and can't do. I feel like I've kind of covered everything. I'm going to go to the chat. I know Christine was posting stuff, but I knew I'd get lost if I tried to read it. Christine said, my mother told me once that she didn't have to talk to me about any sort of sexual education because the school taught it at all, which was definitely not true. Christine was graduated with was Dominic like 1 or 6 months old when you graduated with your first kiddo? Like the school is, I think it's important to have both the school and the at home, because school is going to cover the mechanics, but the conversation needs to go beyond schooling because they're going to get misinformation. A Canadian study done in 2019 states 30% of women aged 15 plus have been sexually assaulted. Yeah, one of the speakers at Global Summit was Sarah Klein, and she was one of the ones that was the gymnast scandal where that guy, I can't remember his name, but he was sexually assaulting all of the gymnasts for, I think she said like 20 years. She was sexually assaulted by this man over and over repeatedly. It was a big thing. And she says that there's 30%, but there's a whole heck of a lot that aren't reported. This man was going for 20 years before anyone said anything. Oh, Mary said that too. Approximately 6% of sexual assaults are reported to police. And I wonder how they even know that amount, because like it's not reported. It's hard to say. 13 months when you graduated. So like this whole not talking, it's our society has taught this because Europe is, they're a lot more open. Sometimes they're a little bit too open, like nudity in commercials is a bit much for me, in my opinion, but but there's nothing wrong with the body. Does anyone have any questions or comments to add?
I have a question.
Mhm.
What is the hardest thing you would say that, like, about talking about sex with your kids? What is the hardest thing for you?
It depends on the kid.
Yeah.
So my oldest, the hardest thing was like I was very adamant that he was going to test out a condom on the Dr. D, but I did not want to. I was like, this is really awkward. I'm gonna have my son holding a Dr. D right in front of me. So that was like that was probably the hardest. I'm an oversharer, so when it comes to talking, I tend to talk too much. I do not know why my laptop keeps beeping because I put it on do not disturb, but whatever. You guys are hearing my messages go off. With my daughter, the hardest part is just having the conversation because she just doesn't want to have it so much. She's now getting a little bit more comfortable. You know what? Actually, I lied. The hardest part is actually the change in conversations that happen in today's day. Transgender may have been a thing when I was a kid, but it was not something really heard of. The different terminologies, like my daughter says she's omnisexual, which is one again I've just heard about, and it is different than pansexual. I can't remember the difference, but Kayla looked it up for me the other day. But just being comfortable. My husband is comfortable, but he's also that trades guy that's brisk, and I was like, dude, can you stop because you are literally offending your daughter right now. She says she's non-binary. She's very feminine, but that's where she's choosing to label herself right now. And my husband tries to be understanding, but there are times where he's like, he says things like, babe, you know, I was really proud when they told me that I was going to have a daughter in ultrasound. And I'm like, you just told her the only way you're going to be proud of her is by being what you've chosen to dictate to her. Like, she's 13. Who knows what she's going to do? She may change and do all the different things. Right now, this is what she is. And saying things like that are not helpful. They're hurtful. So don't do that. Don't put a barricade between yourself and your kid. So I think, yeah, I think that that's probably the hardest part. And again, explaining the transgender to he was at the time, I think it was 5, but also like he likes makeup and pink. He did for a long time. He's not so much anymore. But when he was in grade 1, I think it was, he was asking me if he could be transgender because he wanted to wear makeup and dresses to school, but he didn't want them to make fun of him. This kid loves his penis. There's no way he's transgender. He's always been in love with his penis. He used to ask me when he was little where my penis was and was sad for me when I told him I didn't have one. So he loves his penis, but he wanted to do these things. And I was like, and so explaining to him that regardless of what choices he's making, someone's going to make fun of him. Whether, and like, that's not just sex related. I'm like, kids are jackasses. They don't understand. They haven't developed those skills yet. So you're going to have to be what you want to be. And so he's like, so then I'm both? And I was like, no, you're just Luke. At this stage of the game, it doesn't matter what's dangling between your legs, and it never really will. You're just Luke. Luke is Luke, and be happy with being Luke. You don't have to label that. So those are some of the hardest parts about having these conversations, is just like being open and being aware, but also like the world kind of sucks for some of these conversations.
It does, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I also had another question. What would be like your number one piece of advice for someone who doesn't have kids yet?
I had kids relatively young by today's standards. My kids were planned, and I'd been married for 3 years when I got pregnant with my first, but I was only 23 when I had my first. So I've been a parent almost as long as I've not been a parent. But I think that the biggest piece of advice is to listen. Listen to what they want. Even if you have to force the subject, listening first is always going to help guide you in the direction that it needs to take. It's that whole like misunderstanding thing. If you're asking your kids clarifying questions, and listening to their answers, and I'm a trained life coach as well, and there's two different types of listening. There's listening with the intention of hearing something so you can respond, and then there's listening with the intention of absorbing the information. And that's the most important one I find when it comes to the kids is listening with the intention of just absorbing what they're telling you. You may not have the perfect response, and you probably won't. You're gonna fuck up. We're human. One thing, my oldest has ADHD. My husband has ADHD, but he was that kid in the 80s and 90s where they threw drugs at him to control his behavior. So getting drugs for my oldest was really complicated for my husband because he's like, I don't want to do what my parents did to me. I don't want my kid thinking he's not good enough without these drugs. And so I finally broke into him. Every once in a while, I have these like golden nuggets. I was like, dude, here's the deal. One, I'm not your mom. But two, we are going to fuck up our kids in our own special and unique way, and they're going to need therapy regardless of what we do. Even if there's no such thing as perfect, and we're gonna, I'm sorry, I got real cursy. We went there again. We're going to screw them up. There's really no question about it. You're going to screw them up because you have your past child trauma that you're going to deal with because your parents screwed you up and their parents screwed them up, and everybody's in the cycle of screwing up. So if you can just do one little bit better than what you had, you're on the path to breaking cycles and moving forward. My kids will not likely deal with any sexual trauma because I'm breaking cycles.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I'm turning 36 this year. Every one of my friends has kids. And the way that I just go by what the parents do. So, yeah, I obviously my friends are having kids, like most of them are pretty young at this point. So like, I don't have a lot of experience with like teenagers and actually having to have those conversations. But like, as far as like body positivity and like how they deal with, you know, talking about private parts and stuff like that, I just go by the parents' lead. So when the kid makes, you know, does something or makes a question or anything like that, I kind of look to the parents and then just do what they're doing.
I agree 100%. Jen makes a great point. I was coming at it as the perspective of the parent, but 100%, the very best thing that you can do if you are talking to children who are not your own children is to be a support person to the parent. Be someone who's the kid's willing to, or who's willing to listen to the kid, but also someone who's going to back up the parents and be like, okay, well, your parents are coming at this with the best interest at heart. Maybe talk to them like this, or sharing, like keeping secrets is like, my neighbor likes to give the kids snacks and says, shh, don't tell your parents. That is like the worst thing ever. Because the second you get secrets involved, and any time where there's like, oh, it's just a little secret, no, unless it's a surprise that's going to be explored later, secrets from parents are never safe. It starts with just the little nuggets, just the little ones. And he has a kid, so I'm like, stop doing this. And my kids obviously always come in and immediately tell me, and I was like, thank you for telling me.
I'm glad. I agree with the secrets thing too. The other thing that I was going to say, so I kind of grew up with my cousins. I have two boy cousins, and I would like babysit them, and I've like grown up with them, and one just went off to college. And when he turned 18, I had to have the conversation about the decals on my car and have you Googled them? And of course he had. And then I had the conversation about like what I do and that, you know, I'm helping people learn about their bodies and like keeping relationships together and like all the fluffy parts of our job. And yeah, that was conversation for me because I've seen this kid grow up, you know what I mean? Like I used to babysit them and they used to just rip all their clothes off and run around the house naked just to get a rise out of me. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, it was just, yeah, I think letting them lead the conversation is the best way to go for sure.
Hmm. That was good. Thank you. I appreciate that because I always forget about some of those things like that. Like I know that there's kids I babysat before that now have kids, and it's like, oh, it's so much change.
He was actually off to college, and I was buying him sheets for his bed, and he was going for paleontology. So they had dinosaur sheets, and I was like, oh my god, this is so perfect for dinosaur sheets. You're going for paleontology, and they're on sale. Like this is like, and he was like, Jen, I can't have dinosaur sheets on my bed if I bring a girl back to my room. And I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to send you with some Just Like Me lubricant and some condoms that are, I made sure I sent him with the ones that were like if someone had a latex allergy, they were like latex allergy. And I put them in like this fancy like pencil bag so that because he's going to be in a dorm room, so then it's discreet. So I don't know if his mom also sent him with condoms, but I sent him with condoms.
You're that fun aunt that makes sure things are taken care of. That latex allergy thing is so legit. That's how a friend of mine found out that her daughter was sexually active because she had never told her daughter that her daughter had a latex allergy, and her daughter started having sex and was having reactions down there, and was like, "What the hell is going on?" And her mom's like, oh.
First of all, why would you not tell your kid about an allergy? That's
thoughts
weird
too.
me. Because like
Yeah.
as soon as I got I was like 10 when I was in the hospital with my appendix, and I had an allergy to Demerol, and like now anytime I go anywhere and they ask me what my allergies are, I'm like, I was like trained. I was like, Demerol, I'm allergic to Demerol. They're like, okay, you're getting 3 stitches. Like I don't think we're going to be giving you Demerol today because it's like
Right?
like a super intense like drug.
Yeah.
But like I don't understand how you could raise a kid and not, because like anytime she goes to get her blood drawn or anything, they're gonna like she's interacting with latex. So first of all,
it's not like she was early either. She was like 16, so it wasn't like she was early.
What?
Bear in mind, though, my friend was also a teenage pregnancy, so there's, you're different when you have
That
teenage.
feels more important to me to have that conversation.
Yeah. Oh, Christine said, and if the parent's looking for you for help, being a source of education and having open, honest conversations is important too. Absolutely. Sometimes you get caught up in it. Like if you're the parent and you're having these conversations and you're just like, I don't fucking know. I'm like, wash my hands of them. It's really helpful to be the support person for them to like find out information and conversations. Mary, did you have something to say? I thought you were going to say something at one point.
I was just gonna say it also makes it really hard that like things are, especially with like sexuality and genders and stuff, things are always changing, and it makes it hard for us to even know the things to be able to explain them to our children.
Oh. I was going to reply to Jen. She had to go to dance, but she was gone too quick. Yeah, it's the world is so changing, and raising kids now is not the same as raising kids when we were kids. I even just like the acceptance of mental health is so different now. I've had a couple of debates with my sister-in-law's father-in-law. When COVID schooling happened, he's like, give the kids a break, take it off. And I was like, do you realize what's going to happen to these kids if you give them a break the next 4 months? The average kid loses 50% of what they've learned over the summer, which is 2 months long. And you're saying give them 6 months with no routines, no follow through, and then you've got these kids with special needs and learning disabilities, and you throw them back into it in September and say, cool, you should be fine, we gave you a break. Like, it's not the same. Yeah, this is a good chat. I appreciate you guys all coming out and joining and letting me get on my soapbox.
Does anybody have any questions pertaining to this? We can still stay on, but I will just turn off the recording.